Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Let's Talk Retail. This is where we embark on an extraordinary journey through the realms of retail innovation and transformation. I'm your host, Jaydeep Shetty, and I'm thrilled to introduce you to a series unlike any other. In this podcast, Let's Talk Retail, we will dive deep into the heart of the retail industry to bring you conversations with true thought leaders. Thank you to all of you who've left your comments, encouragement, suggestions, and please do subscribe to Let's Talk Retail channel on YouTube and Spotify. My guest today is an innovator and change maker. Jaydeep Shetty is a retail veteran and has spent close to 3 decades playing a multitude of roles. He was one of the founding members of Shoppers Stop, worked with Inox, was at the Future Group, managing business at Central, and even went on to start his own label/brand. And now he is on the tech side of things, enabling retailers drive efficiencies. Right? So let's get him on board and hear from him firsthand on his journey, the transformation in Indian retail, and much more. So Jaydeep, welcome to Let's Talk Retail, and thank you for taking the time to be here. So typically, how do you spend your Sundays?
Sundays this time, my daughter is in Delhi and my wife is actually, she's also there on work. So they are together. So I'm alone with my Labrador at home. It's been a quiet Sunday, but typically every second or third week, daughter is down. So then we are out with my daughter because she's Bombay, Delhi, right? So she comes in once in 3 weeks. She spends a weekend with us. Otherwise, we normally would either have lunch out or dinner out. Yeah. My wife is a marathoner, so her life is a little busier. She does a long run on Sundays. I generally tend to chill, but I catch up on a lot of reading. So that's like I'm like on the Kindle, there's something which is always downloaded. Some magazine, something is always happening. So that's my Sunday.
Oh, so daughter's working in Delhi, is it?
No, she's doing her degree in culinary arts. She's in the first year at International School of Hospitality, Indian School of Hospitality.
Oh, interesting.
So she's only in the first year, so still a long way to go.
No, that's fine. I mean, yeah, but a great career to choose, given the way the F&B industry seems to be going. There's a lot of action there in that space.
I was always skeptical not for career reasons, but spending those 8 hours in a hot kitchen, it's very challenging. But she loves it. I mean, she's been passionate about it for a very long time. Right. And I don't think we wanted to discourage her at all. Right. Unlike our parents who said, "Nahi, engineer banna hai." There are a lot more career options as well.
No, true. Yeah. But you didn't push into retail? You didn't think of getting into retail?
So when we were running our own brand also, we thought she might take an interest. But I think she's lived her life in fashion. Wife is a designer. It's not that. She's seen the sweat around. So I think it's probably not her interest. But she's been very keen on cooking. I mean, she likes spending time in the kitchen, experimenting, big fan of those master chefs. And I think that bug really bit her when that master chef Australia was on, and after that she's taken to it like a fish to water. So lovely. No complaints. Yeah.
Yeah. Lovely. I'm just going through your profile, Jaydeep. Of course, I know you from a few years now, but going through your profile, and you spent close to 3 decades in the retail industry. Right? It's fascinating. I want to know, just walk us through this journey, right? I mean, you've seen retail literally when the time it possibly was just about taking not even baby steps, maybe just in the womb kind of a situation.
Yeah. So I actually started my career selling advertising space at the Times of India.
Oh, nice.
And I was like bored, yeah. I was working on Femina and Filmfare. And Femina and Filmfare to the outside world is very glamorous. I was working on the awards. But मैं थक गया था. I was trying to get the contestants, visas, passport applications. एक Bollywood actor के घर जाओ, उसका ये signature learning invite. So I was really a courier boy after a while, and I said forever. So I moved out, and there was this little store called Shoppers Stop in Andheri, which had just been, I think, एक 1.5 floor था. And they were going to open up this big department store, and I got called in for an interview, and they asked like, is this something you'd like to do? I looked at the place, and that time, of course, I met B.S. Nagesh, and if you met B.S. and how inspirational he is, so even at that point of time, he said, listen, we are trying to make a Marks and Spencer of India. यार मुझे तो पता भी नहीं था Marks and Spencer क्या है, like सुना था नाम. Then बैठे, we found out a Marks and Spencer. But then I said, नहीं, I'd like to work here, and he says, I want you to run marketing, and our campaigns have not worked, but now we're trying to refurbish it, and there's going to be a long, good career. So I took it up. Beautiful things happened. The beautiful black and white Shoppers Stop campaign happened. First Citizens Club ka loyalty program happened. The store became larger. AK karke और भी stores bane. Van Heusen, Louis Philippe, Pepe or Levi's, all these brands were selling, and that time it was a hot property. Like to work for Shoppers suddenly, because there were a lot of media interviews and BSN would let me even do media interviews. Wow. So I became a little well known at 25, 26. So my parents who thought, yeah, he left the Times of India to work in a shop, like now it looks like there's something respectable happening. So, but that built, then we built Bangalore, then Delhi hua, so Hyderabad, then 3, 4, 5 stores hue. So that journey was beautiful. I think I started when Shoppers was some 9 or 10 crores, and I think when I left, it was probably about 140 odd crores. Those days it was quite big. Ansal Plaza also had launched. So that was typically the journey. And post that, I moved. I thought there was no career in retail because Shoppers ke alawa or lifestyle tha. So I said, maybe it's a good time to get out. And one day, one headhunter called me for country manager marketing for the BBC. I had worked in media. I said television channel, and I met the marketing director, and she was on the board of the BBC. She met me, and suddenly I got selected, and it was some 3x salary and all that, and reporting into the London office. So I just took it up, and it was a complete sea change at that point of time, because suddenly I was working with NDTV. Those days, Dr. Pranay Roy himself used to sit in on those meetings. I used to work with Karan Thapar on UTV, did some programming. Siddharth Basu was doing Question Time India. So there was a lot of work with cable operators, with the programming guys. You had to support airtime sales. You had to run campaigns to drive viewership to the channel, had to deal with the hotels, the share brokers, because we wanted to get carriage on these institutions. तो तभी क्या वो people meters होता था. So the more you ran BBC, the more you'd come on the TRP ratings. So I worked there for a little over a year and a half, but my real change happened, but I got bored. Honestly, there wasn't enough work. It treated you well, but I don't think there was any accountability, and it was a fairly cushy job. I moved out into Inox. That also happened suddenly because I met a gentleman called Shishir Bajal, who was one of the senior most people at the ITC hotels at one point of time, and he had taken over as CEO of Inox. It was promoted by the Industrial Oxygen Group, the Inox Air Products Group, and he said, we're building multiplexes. So मैंने तो सुना था Priya Vasant Vihar. So I know what multiplexes were. He said, we are building a whole chain of multiplexes. Even Z has got into the game, and we want to dominate. And he met me. He was very clear what he wanted to do on the business. He said everything is inspired. It looked absolutely international. He said it'll be so inspirational that the movie won't matter because people will come to the multiplex. So that was very interesting. And then the promoters met me. So we had a 2-hour meeting with the promoters. One of the people on the board was Bobby Bedi, who was the guy who produced Bandit Queen.
Yeah.
Bobby Bedi was on the board, and we had that a little longish interview in Delhi. And I think they realized I was good at building traffic because I had built, in many ways, I can say I had built Shoppers Stop because I was the first real CMO for that company. And I said, no, I can take over. I know how to build this brand. So that's when I moved. I said, let's start working on the multiplex. It was a completely different model, boss, because Tabhi, you had to go to, if you went to a Devgan Entertainment, for example, the CEO of that company would say, Kajol hai. They didn't want to discuss business. They were more celebrity driven, the whole business.
Right.
Like, yeah. So anything you had to do with such films, they would say, which was, so that professionalism hadn't come in as yet, and they did not understand multiplexes. Even the way we delivered the exhibition experience is very different. Multiplexes, the volume of the sound is at a different level versus a single screen. Single screen में ना रजनीकांत screen पे आता है तो वो sound ऊपर जाता है. That's all managed by the projectionist. यहाँ पे everything was professionally driven, and they didn't understand this space. So it took a while to build that brand. So we did everything from creating the architecture, the design, the branding. We opened our first multiplex in Pune, then Baroda, then we opened in Calcutta. And luckily, Shishir built up this beautiful management team, and almost every Inox was a runaway success. In the course of my stint at Inox, I dealt with Kishorji a couple of times because Inox had a couple of properties where Kishorji as in Kishore Biani of Future Group, he had built he had taken a couple of spaces. And I remember Kishorji said, if you ever want to work with me, call me. I'd be happy to look at it. And one day a headhunter called and said, Kishorji wants to meet up with you. Are you happy to meet? And I said, yeah, of course. So I actually met Kishorji in the back of his car driving up to Phoenix that he had a meeting at Phoenix Lower Parel. And he didn't even ask me questions. He was already explaining to me what the role is and what he wants me to do. And he would always speak vaguely. हाँ, हम एक seamless mall बना रहे हैं Bangalore में, but it's a beautiful one. It's an old Victoria property. It's going to be splendid, and everything is going to be on consignment. And I've already got an operations head there. I want you to run that marketing. And whatever you've done in Shoppers Stop now, इसको replicate करना है, because I know you understand this experience thing. And also you run some private labels के लिए for Pantaloon. I need somebody. So he gave out 4-5 things I needed to do. And he said, offer letter, all that. He said, I'll set it up for you and all that. And in a month and a half, I said, Kishorji, I'm getting married. He said, Kabhi join karoge? I said, I'm getting married in December. So he said, tum ek mahina le lo marriage ke baad. You join me on Jan 15th. So I remember I got married on December 19th, Jan 15th, I joined him. And when I landed up at Future Group, there were 10 other things I also had to look after. But it was great fun. So 7 years with Future Group, I did multiple things. Central, of course, I was running Central as business head. Operations was not reporting into me, but I was running the business there. And I used to run all of Pantaloon's private label brands. I did a fair amount of work with the international joint ventures. In fact, 4 international joint ventures I set up. Lee Cooper, ETAM, which doesn't exist anymore. Celio. We did a duty-free business with a company called Alpha Future. Yes, so there were 3-4 businesses that I ran simultaneously, and it was exciting. Until 2010, 2011, I got bitten by the bug saying, yaar, itna sara fashion kya, maybe I need to set up a brand on my own. And I was being brought into the marketing fold at Future Group also, which I wasn't too sure I wanted to do. So I spent a couple of years consulting with Everstone Capital, and meanwhile putting aside money to run this brand called Mineral. And I set up this brand in 2012, Bohemian Women's Wear. All of the design and the product was driven by Priyadarshini Rao. She's my wife. And we set up with 3 stores. The Bianis were kind enough. They gave me 3 stores because they said, and Bianis were kind enough to say, we don't even want to see the product. You just take the spaces. I know if it'll be good. So that helped me. Then we got Shoppers, then Lifestyle happened. We ran the business reasonably well until about 2018, 2019. I think we faltered after about 5 or 6 years of the business. We tampered too much with the product. I think we started getting driven by market trends. And when you start moving towards market trends and forget what the soul of your brand is, then you start losing customers.
And I'm going to come back to Mineral in a little bit. Yeah. Because I really want to dig deep.
Sure.
Yeah.
So post Mineral, and then I moved into a professional role for a very short time, but then I largely worked in consulting. I run a sports distribution business where I have an interest in. We have licenses for 4 international brands. I consult largely with Green Honchos. Green Honchos is a very reputed D2C enabling agency based out of Noida. We work on marquee brands. We do the Apple partner programs, Reliance, Aditya Birla, and so on and so forth. TIGC, Snitch, Rare Rabbit. So it's a beautiful thing to do things in the digital space, being a dyed-in-the-wool retailer. So
right.
I think that's been exciting, and that's pretty much my life these days.
Super. Yeah, and I think you're still connected with retail.
Oh yeah, I'm still connected with fashion, I would say. Yeah, I miss retail, but I'm still very much in the fashion game.
Right. Interesting, as you were mentioning your journey and how you started with Shoppers Stop, and obviously I've never had the opportunity to meet B.S. Nagesh. Heard a lot of great things about that. Of course, Kishorji is someone that I've got the opportunity to work with. So any memorable lessons or things that you really picked up from some of these icons, these legends?
So I think, each, whether you work with a B.S. Nagesh, who's a professional versus an entrepreneur, you imbibe a lot of things through them directly or indirectly. So one with Mr. Nagesh, and I'll call him Nagesh for convenience. With Nagesh, he's got this moral compass, which is like inviolable. I have to do the right thing. Very good leadership qualities, very inspiring. He's very idealistic. His entire thought process is to improve the delivery. I'm talking of the 90s. How do we get our service right? How do we get our brand right? How do we get our product right? How do we ensure that we are exceeding customers' expectations? How does the client feel special? So everything is on the delivery. So the entire organization will focus on delivering the product and the experience. Shetty, if you're handling marketing, you ensure that we get traffic. So that's typically how he envisioned it. He was also very conscious of the brand. The other beautiful thing about Nagesh was, as long as he was on the leadership team, he would never allow any political dynamic to come into play. He would always diffuse anything that happened. And he also believed that the people internally must grow to lead the company tomorrow. So whoever grew in Shoppers Stop always did well and moved up to a leadership position. Coming to KB, honestly, if you met Kishorji, and you never know what he's thinking half the time.
True.
He expects you to understand what he's thinking. Yeah. The thing is, you always know there's some genius at play with him because he looks at things very differently, boss. He's completely clued into the cultural landscape. He goes to Baroda. He knows what the Baroda customer is like. He's interested in who's wearing what clothes. The poor kid is wearing what clothes. Who's cooking in the house. He's very clued into all that. And the other thing which always used to puzzle me about Kishorji was when I managed Central, Sunday ko 3-4 baje na, and I'm sorry, but it used to be my sleep time, that 1 hour of sleep. Kishorji ka call aata tha. Acha, kitna hua Bangalore mein? Hyderabad kitna kiya? Lifestyle ka number hai? Shoppers ka kitna hua hai? Monday he wanted me to know all the numbers of all the competition. And whether that kind of cluing in was amazing about him. And he would always ask the right questions. The question he always used to ask, even for our own brands, he said, I don't want to get your analysis. I don't want your PowerPoint. He would say, customers, John Miller, this is why they are buying John Miller. Then what can we do to sell more John Miller? They're very simple, straightforward questions. Right. But they were loaded questions. Like he wanted you to get that right. Central May, why has food not worked? What can we do to do food, to do food better? And I think he understood. He understood Big Bazaar. He understood Central. And he was very blunt about it. He said, ye luxury, ye Louis Vuitton, Hermes and all. He said, I don't want to understand. He said, I spend more time drinking expensive chai with these guys than doing business. He said, I don't want to run a business like that. So he was clear. And the thing was also, he's relatively short-tempered because he wants answers there and then. So I think, but it was great working with both of them. Two completely different people, but I think they always kept you on your toes. And also there was this, both of them had this sense of idealism. And with Kishorji, man, he was not scared to do anything. He would take any bets. Bhale wo 10 crore ka bet ho, 100 crore ka bet. He said, I will take it and I will do it. He was also a guy who believed in speed over perfection. He says, start the thing. As we are going along, we'll fix the engine. You start it pehle. I think that was beautiful. I've not come across somebody who was so cavalier about it. Okay, we'll see it. We'll fix it later.
Right. And when speaking about it, getting a call in the afternoon and asking what numbers have this store done, that was my initiation into the group, right? I think that culture just carried on.
Yeah. And his phrase was, on Mondays is market make. Man, it was such an abstract question. You don't know what to answer. And if you said market acha tha, so then he'll ask you,
right, I know. It's a kind of a sword hanging around. You don't know how.
Yeah, but it was great. And
super. Yeah, I know. Great times, of course. And very, very, like you said, I think extremely, very visionary. You don't know what he's thinking. And it was always about speed. He tells you something in the morning and he wants it done in the evening.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And he hates you coming to his room with a paper and a notebook. He says, forget the notebook. Just keep your paper and pen down, he would say.
It's bringing back a lot of memories. and I guess that culture just permeated, no? Because we had Vishnuji as our immediate CEO, but I think Vishnuji also imbibed very similar kind of traits. The kind of
craziest thing about Kishorji in my experience. There were a couple of times I would say, but Kishorji, in the morning you said to do, yesterday you said this. So what, he would just look at you blankly and he would say, I changed my mind now. Can't I change my mind?
That's such an entrepreneurial characteristic, right?
But that's also somebody who doesn't put his ego before anything else. The thing about him was, he was always willing to learn.
Yeah.
Change tracks, and people don't usually do that.
Fantastic. So I want to know now a little more about Jaydeep, the entrepreneur, right? Little I know about Mineral, and I've seen Mineral, of course, in the stores. Yeah. I always thought it was a brand that was a little cut above the rest. So what is your experience building or trying to build Mineral as a brand? How was that experience?
So when we started, and in 2010-11, I was thinking, I've got a little bit of money, can afford to put up 1 or 2 stores, and I also had an angel investor with me. I said, ek do store to kar payenge. And Priya and me said, let's put together. And we had this thing about creating a brand, which looked there are brands in a similar space, anthropology, Comtova the Cotonnier, anthropology. We said there is a space for an Indian anthropology kind of a brand. a little above the market, not fast fashion at all, because the whole world had moved towards fast fashion. And this Zara ka bhoot was on everybody. We have to do them. We said, no, let's do durable clothing, which will last 2 years, 3 years. We'll work on cotton, wools, linens, and so on. More bohemian, timeless. Sadly, some people interpreted timeless as being vintage, but they were mostly classics, high quality, high finishes, and typically to an urban consumer. And we opened 3 stores, Phoenix Palladium. We opened one in Linking Road, Bandra, and we opened one in Infinity in Malad. Infinity Malad wasn't doing that well, but the other 2 stores did well. And we kind of got a great following. We had a couple of great boosts because there was a movie called Vicky Donor. There was a movie called Cocktail with Deepika Padukone and Diana Penty, and they were wearing our clothes. And it was strange because all these things went viral because people realized that these clothes were from Mineral. So we got that viral boost. People came in, and I know some of the Bollywood stars started coming and shopping at our stores. So it got a little bit of virality. We had these beautiful stores which looked like colonial houses. The whole store was like a house. There were no mannequins. We used these body forms like the tailor ka body form, that kind of. So the whole interpretation and the presentation was different. Sometime after 2.5, 3 years, Future Group came in. They put an investment in, and we also moved into shop and shops. At a point of time, I realized, and typically it also happens with a lot of investors, they want to see the 100, 200, 300 crore number, right? Now that 100, 200, 300 crore number will only happen if you start doing lesser interpretation and starting to move with the market.
Right.
I think Mineral was a little early in its time. People remember it very fondly. We were in 175 stores across.
Wow.
Yeah, shop and shops, 5 stores. Shoppers Stop, Lifestyle, and Central. And we also were doing Brand Factory. So we had 175 locations. I think we diluted what was the core of the brand. Also in a shop and shop, I don't think we were never we were at some points of time, but we were never in the top 2, 3 brands. Now what happens in a department store, if you're not in the top 2, 3, you get sized down. And I think we lost some adjacencies as well. So if you were next to an and let's say a Veramoda only, suddenly you got positioned next to some other brands, a different set of brands. So queuing what you stood for was getting a little difficult. We were always growing, but I think margins were under pressure. I also think at least at that point of time, you had to do 55% at full price. And we were just about crossing 50% at full price. So there was always pressure on the bottom line. If I had a regret about that, I don't think I believed too much in the e-commerce space at any point of time. So less than 3 to 4% of my business was e-commerce. And I wish I had thought of it differently. We almost got a couple of VCs to also fund it, but they wanted us to be essentially a D2C brand. It didn't really work out for us. But it was a beautiful journey because I remember a time I put every single penny that we had in our with us outside of our house and cars, we put into the brand. So it was day and night we would be working only on that. If I got a point in time, I even sold my car to pay off some suppliers. So I remember 2 years I used to travel in an auto because there was no car at home. But even in those days when I had very little money, we would go to Paris, we would go to Italy, we would go to Vietnam, I used to fly a photographer from Paris into Vietnam to shoot our campaigns. The first few campaigns, we actually, Priya and me painted on the sets with our own brushes. Like we really bootstrapped that brand. It was exciting. I mean, when it finally folded up, it was like it left a void.
Yeah,
but it's something that I don't think too much about. I tried to sell it to a couple of people and a couple of large companies. The monies didn't work out right. They wanted me and Priya to continue with it for another 5 years. We weren't sure at that point of time. So all in all, an interesting journey. And I think if you're in the 30 to 50 crore space, it was difficult to survive COVID.
Yep, I agree. And I'm sure the journey would have been fantastic. And you telling me itself is giving me a lot of. I'm actually seeing the story behind it, right?
Yeah.
I should just meet you in the office and watch the launch, and this is the new collection and so on and so forth. But today, I think I'm actually now seeing the bigger picture.
Right.
Yeah. And typical entrepreneur's journey, right? I mean, somewhere
absolutely.
Get caught up with certain things which you don't. And it's very difficult, I guess, for an entrepreneur when you start off and you have the dream or the vision. And I think everybody, like you rightly said, I think mass becomes the norm, right? Because everybody wants to Yeah, but being present in 175 stores was fantastic. I mean, at that time.
Yeah. But I also feel that in entrepreneurship and the journey, we always have to look at that there's a good 80% chance that you will fail. It's a reality. And I think people don't talk enough of the failures. I had a mixed bag, I think, and fashion is the only business. You have 2 bad seasons, now boss, your business gaya. You can't have even a gap after 20, 30 years, like 4 bad seasons, the business is in trouble. And I mean, fashion is the only business like that. And maybe the restaurant business.
Yeah, very right. So two points I think I'm picking up from what you told me. One is on margins, right? That's, I think, has been a debate for a long time now in the retail space. Yeah. And of course, the cycles. Is India really up there in terms of fashion?
I think it's how you play the perception game. I think that is what matters. See, Zudio, for example, is playing the perception game beautifully. So see, typically when a customer goes into a Max or an FBB in the earlier days or into a Zudio, they truly believe they get fashion, right? I mean, yeah, kahan t-shirt milta hai.
True.
999 mein kahan chinos milte hai, So I think, so I don't think, so we also look at fashion from a Western lens. Abhi salwar kameez fashion is apna fashion, right? I don't know if, but this is beautiful video of this lady called Jasmine Kaur, which is going around, where she's showing these churidar kurtas and it's yeah. So I'm saying Indian entrepreneurs are another breed altogether.
True. Yeah.
So abhi wo bhi dekho ki, see, I look at 1990s. Like I'll just quickly explain ki 1990s mein kya hua. India ka the economy got liberalized. So the yuppie culture came in. We were fresh MBs, we got 20,000, 30,000 rupees salaries. जो 93 में बहुत होता था. मतलब घर का खर्चा 6,000 में चल जाता, बाकी 14,000. So that is how business started, right? So and तभी वो we used to see cable TV, foreign जाना शुरू हो गया. By the late 90s, you could have afford one foreign ticket. So that was the one culture. The second one, the multiplexes came in, the malls came in. Karan Johar made his beautiful movies. So all those things happened. Once the multiplex came in and the culture changed, you got a little more confident India. And by that time now, abhi dekho yaar, I'll tell you, like today, even if our children were to go abroad, they've seen so much of television that going to America, even the first time, is not a surprise for them.
Yeah.
They know what New York will look like. Dukane kaise hai. Hamare liye wo shock, not shock, but there was you don't know how to eat, kaise order karna hai, accent kya hai. I think it kept changing, and that after 2010, I just feel e-commerce came in and people started buying things online, and that was another disruption.
Right.
So I can see those 3 phases that happened.
And is that also, again, another question which is taking off from, so was that a pattern of consumer behavior change that you really saw happening all this time?
Yeah. So to me, the sad part of my 30-year journey is that period between 2015. Those 7 years now, the amount of discounting that happened on the market was so crazy that I don't know what we were looking at. We actually, as retailers and fashion retailers, we actually destroyed the market. It took us a long time just to fight with the Flipkarts and the Amazons, which are offering discount. Even physical retail went into the discounting thing. And it was easy to build brands in the 90s. There एक logic, एक positioning, आप एक positioning statement बना सकते थे, brand का एक brand identity. You could read John Noel Capforus, this is what my brand identity prism है. वो सब simple था. There was a linear way of building brands. It became more and more difficult as we went by, and the cultural landscape, it became fragmented. Everybody wanted to be like Sachin Tendulkar in the 90s and 2000, but then the Friends came, Friends in the US came, pop stars came, then Hindi Bollywood came. Today, Telugu cinema is another animal altogether.
Yeah.
So the entire culture. So I think those challenges are different. Now it is becoming more difficult. Today you can't say, I'm going to launch a department store or a store. You have to think of new means. I think it's become a lot more complex. And this generation, what nobody is looking at is, आज के जो बच्चे हैं, जो 2023 वाले, remember they are 21, 22, 23 years. They were born in 99 and 2000. Boss, jab the mobile had come, the internet was there. They have never seen a world without the mobile or the internet.
True.
Today, my child asks me that, how the hell did you ever have a mobile? How did you live your life? What was life without the internet? These kids are all confident. They can go talk to a Nigerian. They can go and talk to an American. I mean, they can go any part of the world and they're still not aliens anymore.
Right.
I think that is the big difference that's happened.
Actually, 20 years ago, how would we find locations and addresses without Google Maps?
Oh God. Oh God. Arey, there was stress or taxi. Will he take me to the right place or what? It is very difficult, a very different era. But I think today it's everything is simplified, everything is optimized. Look at the business end also, na? Okay. Then the ERPs came, then data analytics came, then everything went into big data, then visualization. Today it's so easy, yaar. Earlier, a merchandiser had to sit with a stock movement report, an aging report, a rate of sale report, and stock in the warehouse. There were 4 sheets. You had to create different sheets and start working on Excel to get anything
Yes.
done. I mean, today your report is there in the morning. It's bizarre.
It was very complex, right? I remember even when I joined in sometime in 2007, 2008, very complex. I think everybody would walk in with a bunch of Excel sheets and start talking, saying, and look at those sheets and try and figure out.
You know, now I know most companies are working on apps, so they know. I mean, if you had 4 stores, 40 departments, so it's all on the app, how much each one is doing right now.
Yeah.
It's all real time, right? It was crazy those days, yeah.
And this technology and the coming of digital commerce, right? It's evolved, of course. Pandemic kind of accelerated this evolution. So how do you see the intersection of this and its effect on consumer experiences, you know?
So the early internet until 2000, if you want discount, you went to the internet. Otherwise, you went to the stores. I think after pandemic, everybody's got used to the internet now. People buy digitally. The other thing is, I mean, I read somewhere that close to 45 crore people have bought something on their mobile last year. Wow. 45 crores, you're talking 1/3 of India, yaar. Whatever they must have bought, bhale wo nail cutter ho, but they bought. So today everybody is trigger happy. आप ट्रेन में जा रहे हो, बस में जा रहे हो, उबर में जा रहे हो, यू आर चेकिंग कि क्या ऑफर चल रहा है. फास्ट फैशन के जो ब्रांड्स है उनके सब एप्स है आपके पास. यू आर कॉन्स्टेंटली लुकिंग एट ऑफर्स. पीपल आर लुकिंग एट Amazon डील. पीपल लाइक होम मेकर्स आर सिटिंग एंड लुकिंग यार होम पे क्या डील्स हो रहे हैं. So everything has become real time, and I think people have now realized that if I want something basic, if I want a Van Heusen or a Louis Philippe or an Arrow shirt, if I know my size, I do not need to go to the store. मुझे पता है मैं 42, 44 में मेरा बैठ. I can buy it online. If I don't like it, I can send it back. I think that has completely changed. And everybody is now adopted omni-channel. So I don't think you rarely find retailers who say, अरे online हम लोग नहीं करें, हम लोग physical में करेंगे. Everybody's embraced it. So I think finally, in another couple of years, 20 to 25% of even offline retailers, their business will come from online sales. So I think that I am told, and I could be wrong, but I believe H&M is the most downloaded app currently in India among the fashion guys.
Interesting.
So, and I think they do a fair chunk of their business even from the app itself. So I think it's good for people like Bestseller. Of course, Zara has an app. For Zudio, all to start moving into the app as well. So the app universe is the next phase, I think. It's no longer your URL, payjeans.com. Aap just app. People are not so guarded on their real estate. Agar aapka mobile ka RAM is 32 GB, aapka laptop, I mean, it's got reversed.
Right.
I mean,
but yeah, the entire thing is the tech is actually speeding up on the mobile rather than on the larger devices.
And 94% now is mobile first. 94%. It's just crazy.
On the e-commerce shopping, is it?
Yeah, 94%. I think that's really the change. And what we call the younger consumer. I mean, at my age, the 35-year-old consumer is a young consumer.
Right.
But our definition of young has changed. There's also a demographic that is changing. If you look at the demographic data, in 2000 May, about 60 to 62% of India was below 30.
Right.
You know, that is now 48%. India is also aging by 3 to 4 years on average. So the demographic, people are having lesser children. So things are changing at a level that we don't realize. When you kept saying young India, of course it is still young, but there is a demographic change that's happening, and that's creeping. It's very silent. So you'll have another inflection point. For example, if I'm 50 years, I'm not the same 50-year-old that my dad was. When our parents were 50 years, they looked different, they felt different, their lifestyles were different. Hey, we still want to go out and dance with friends. Our parents were not like that. Yeah. They were only sitting at home and thinking, yaar, isko admission to milega, isko naukri to milega. Their stress points were different.
Very different. Very different. True. Yeah, I think there's been a lot of massive shift, right? And I'm coming back to a point that you mentioned again going back to your interactions with Mr. Nagesh, and of course, the kind of service levels that Nagesh brought in, right? I don't see a lot of retailers even kind of practice that today. Yeah. Is it something that ails the industry, or is it something that they're not willing to do? Because customers are looking for experiences today.
You're right on looking for experiences. I'll try and answer this service question.
Yeah.
90s shopper stop or the late 90s, early 2000s, it is important to greet a customer. Even when we worked on Central, it was always namaste, and that was still a very large part of the service thing. I think the younger customer, and when I say younger, I mean below 30, yeah. I think the new generation is becoming agnostic to service. I no longer need to say, how are you, sir? How was your day? No, they're not that. They want to find product and check out fast. So if you remember the 90s and 2000s retail, you try to get a customer to spend more time in the store, browse the store. Here, if you look at, I mean, you with your own experience, you see after 2005 and 10, we try to design our department stores in a way that people can find things fast, go to the trial room and check out and leave. The immersive experiences, I think, become far less important today. Far less important. Agar aap luxury mein bhi jao, you go to a Louis Vuitton, Burberry, jo store aap naam le, it is no longer about this experience. I mean, there are, of course, exceptions like the Sabyasachi store and so on, but largely it is not about, I think, the physical experience. You do physical experiences more to show people where you stand. It's more chest beat. Like I want to have the biggest Manyavar store or the biggest bestseller store or the biggest whichever Levi's store. But it's more about going there and proving that Under Armour, boss, see, this is where I stand. This is what I'm capable of. So I think it's more imaging. It's not so much like we always say, right, in retail, flagship stores to dhanda karte hi nahi hai. Which is true, but there's a different purpose that it serves.
Yeah.
So that's, I feel experience now, I'm saying it's important, but people are not looking at that, the personalization. For example, 95 mein, 97 mein, if I send you an email or a letter saying, dear Mr. This is what you're a first citizen, you'd feel very happy. If I send you something, you'll know that I don't give a damn. Yaar, computer se. So people have also gotten smart to that personalization.
Right.
Like when we call a call center, boss, I don't want this IVR, yaar. Koi to phone uthao, yaar. I want to talk to somebody, right? True. That is personalization now.
Correct. And important point again that you kind of mentioned is you've seen on personalization, right? There's so much of talk on personalization today. Right. And of course, First Citizens Club, which started, I don't know, about 35 years ago.
Yeah, 90s, almost 30 years now.
Almost 30 years, right? You've seen the concept of loyalty CRM kind of grow as the industry also grew, right? What do you think of personalization today?
I'll answer it in two parts. I think personalization has a huge role as far as whether digital, remarketing, CPaaS, all of that has a very, very important part in our communication, because that is the way you can maintain a kind of a dialogue, and also you can stay top of mind with the customer. So it works beautifully. Even whether you're doing an app, and like even whatever it is, if my Chinese restaurant, which I go to, sends me a happy birthday wish, even if I know it's computerized, it still makes me feel good. So it's not intrusive, because kya yaar, happy birthday to. But loyalty, and I don't believe with the rest of the world. I believe loyalty is over. Better you give me a discount and get me out. I don't want to run your loyalty program. You tell me you have co-branded loyalty card, bhai, 7 credit card hai. So I think the loyalty, I am not a believer. I'm personally not a believer of a loyalty program, because if your product is superior, wo loyal hoga hi. US Polo doesn't matter whether I'm in the loyalty program. Right. Why is US Polo so successful? Not because of the loyalty program. Product speaks for itself, people are buying it. So I feel that is something that I think the loyalty now, I think, is a concept that needs to get obsolete. Especially these points and rewards and all now, I think it's an obsolete thing. But personalization has a lot of benefits, a lot of things. But even this, I think people will get sick of it 5-7 years down the line, because people don't like retargeting, they don't like remarketing, they don't like people being intrusive anymore. Even the most popular thing, I just put it in my junk folder.
Interesting. So then what should brands do? And that brings me to my next point that I wanted to kind of quiz you on. Obviously, you spoke about the massive change that's happened in overall the fashion sector, especially, and overall in retail. But what are the transformations that are taking place that you've seen that I think retailers should be?
So 90s, early 2000s, we did a positioning prism. We started saying this is what our brand and this is the kind of messaging you want to go. I think what is gone into is now you look at brands and you look at what are the associations with that brand. For example, your focus is Lacoste tennis. This is the lifestyle that Lacoste stands for. This is the lifestyle that US Polo stands for, whatever that brand is, or a Levi. So you're suddenly building associations. So you have to focus on building brand associations. At the same time, you've got to be able to build community. How do people feel part of that world? And of course, the master of it has been Apple. You're using a Mac, I'm using a Mac, so we are part of the same community. And that unsaid community, which also what Starbucks did, right? Hamara lifestyle tha. We also liked going, na, because we felt like those guys in New York. Hum kaam pe ja rahe, Starbucks se Americano le rahe. Although we like the filter coffee, but it looks nice to be seen with Americano. I'll get into my car, go to work, and I walk in. So I think those associations, I think that's signaling. I think signaling social status is still an important part and will remain there. And social status, not only in terms of wealth, it's also in terms of cool. Is this the kind of music I'm hearing? Do I wear a New York Jets ka cap? What do I wear? So I think associations have become a lot more than pure branding. And I think that's where it's moved. How do you build a community? How do you do an event in a store, get people in together, get people to communicate with each other, tell people what you stand for. It could be an online community. It could be an Instagram follower community. Now, all these are actually communities that you built, right? Whether it's on Facebook. So all those things are becoming important. And they're also adding a new layer to your brand, which wasn't there earlier, which you couldn't have done when there was no digital universe.
Absolutely. So I think, is that what's going to now happen with personalization also kind of becoming more community driven?
Yeah, I think it is going to be a lot more community driven. Yes, you're right.
Yeah. So I think, I think the idea of, which I think a lot of stores don't do, a lot of brands don't yet do, right? The building of tribes, the building of these communities to kind of get people together and actually build, for want of a better word, I'll still use the word loyalties, but to build that stickiness.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, tribe is the right word. People with a common interest, bonding together. I think that's what people need to build. Like I can see even some of the department stores and all that, they've not built tribes. There was a time when there was a core central customer, core Shopper Stop customer, core West Side customer. There was bonding and that whole feeling, right? Whether you like it or not, Zara still has it. There is a Zara woman in Bombay City, in Bangalore. There is a Zara woman. I think some brands have been able to do it better.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a Zudio community. I'm not aware, but there probably is one.
Yeah, possible, because suddenly you see this whole segment that's coming up, which is your value-based segment, like on Max and all that's taking up. And then on the other side, you have other end of the spectrum, you have the luxury or the international labels that are kind of finding its way into the Indian market. Yeah.
I also feel somewhere that department store, now the multi-brand department store as a concept, I don't know if it has legs. I mean, it's a disappearing format. And the department stores aren't doing too much private label and they're going to be under pressure, because why would I go to a department store and buy the same brand which is available in the same mall in the same store? Yeah. You're not delivering anything to me. I think that is also going to be under pressure.
Yes, interesting. And also, I think in addition to that, I think maintaining these department stores is a challenge.
I mean, ek to consignment, then there are fixed margins, you have a cost of operations. So I think there are challenges there as well.
So given all that, what do you think? What is your perspective for Indian retail, say the next, I don't know, 5 years is a good window to look at, a runway to look at, but at least the next.
All the data that I've been reading of in the recent few years is that 108 tier 2 cities, and the way consumption has grown and the Zudios and the trends of the world have gone there, and that completely zaps me. I mean, it's very, very interesting I think that's a huge growth area. I think people who are doing private label and good private label will continue to do well. Whether it's a West Side or whether it's a Zudio or a Trends or the Azorts of the world. And I think they've got one more. They've also got one more fast fashion, which they launched. I think all of those will continue to do well, provided, of course, they hit the price value equation. So I think that is a growing market, and that's where most of the growth is going to come. We also must remember that because the new generation is buying houses lesser and lesser, and they're spending on rent. They have a little more money on hand to spend. So people are delaying their first house purchase till they are 40 years. And that gives a lot of disposable income for these people. So I see that also fueling consumption. I don't believe that Indians by and large, and I hate to say this, I don't think they are very fashion conscious. They like to believe they are fashion conscious, but we are not that fashion forward as the West is. In fact, I think Indian women also are more fashion conscious when it comes to ethnic versus Western. So I think if you're going to give a good product at a good price, it works. Yeah. I know there's this whole hawa about sustainability, good environment practices. Unfortunately, I think the Indians are still not bothered with that. Everybody likes to pay lip service, and there's too much of greenwashing that's happening by the brands also. Ki hum ye karte hai, wo karte hai. I don't think that's really. I think that awareness needs to come in. I don't know if it will come in the next few years. I mean, I have my doubts. I'm a little skeptical about that.
Last question. There's a lot of talk on sustainability and actual omni-channel really taking off.
Omni-channel completely. Sustainability, I'll simply say, Jitin, I wish it would take off. I think it's important for us because I say to the pinch of regret also, because my brand originally, when we conceived it, it was completely built on sustainability. We built paper bags. There was no plastic used in that company. But I don't think people really bothered so much about it. And I think people should start bothering. I think we pay, as consumers and as brands, we pay too much lip service to these things, and we don't actually put that into practice. I hope that will come into play.
Jaydeep, it was an absolute pleasure and great fun talking to you.
No, it was super. I enjoyed myself. Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, lovely, lovely. And it was great. I mean, thank you so much for taking the time.
Not at all. Thanks, yeah. Bye.
Bye.